Today we're going to talk about another type of transformation. So we talked about translations the other day. We talked about all of them together. We've got reflection is what's next. We'll talk about rotation next week. So in your notebook on page 22, let me make sure it's really 22. Yes. On page 22, you're going to label that 2.2 reflections. That's going to be the title for 22 and 23. Okay, so 22 and 23 are 2.2 reflections. I'm taking a piece of paper that was at the bottom of this video and cutting it in half. Those of you that are at home already have a half, unless you are a distance learner, and then, well, you either print it off or you're copying it down. I forgot to glue, because I always do when I start these videos. Okay, I'm going to glue this right here on page 22. And I'm going to write on it and get a new glue. That's bad. Okay, so we're going to talk about reflections. There are certain rules that happen with reflections that you can either memorize the rule or know how to reflect without the rule. Remember, a reflection is just flipping over something. It's like a mirror image of something. I want you real quick, if you're at home and you're copying, either you have the copy or you're writing this down, to make lines right here. We're going to go straight down for each of these. It should have been a box, and it's not. And I'm sorry, but fix it now. Okay, there we go. We're going to do the same thing here. Alright, there we go. Alright, now that I can pick up that straight edge. Alright, so first of all, we are going to write down the coordinates for A, B, C, and D. So A, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So negative 3, comma 4. B is at negative 1, comma 4. C is at negative 2, comma 2. And D is at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4, 2. Alright, this page, this box here, is designed for you to be able to recognize what the rules are. And we're going to write the rules down right here. We're going to go ahead and separate these as well. So, you're going to need some highlighters today. You're going to need 4 different colors. I'm going to use green, orange, pink, and blue. So I've got green. I'm going to highlight my points for the x-axis in green. And I'm going to identify my rule for the x-axis in green. And I'm going to kind of do them all at the same time here. Here is the x-axis. Make sure I actually graph it right, because, you know, can't erase this highlighter. Okay. I'm going to reflect over the x-axis. That means that I'm literally going to flip it. Since C is 2 units away from this x-axis, C prime will be 2 units away from the x-axis in this direction. Okay, D is 2 units away, so D prime will be 2 units away. B is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away, so it will now be 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. And A is also 4 units here. Okay. right, here is a reflection across the x-axis. We're going to list the points and see if we can determine a rule where it would be xy maps to one of these. Okay, so A prime is at negative 1, 2, 3, comma, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4. The coordinate stayed the same. Let's see if that works for all of them. B prime is at negative 1, comma, negative 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, notice the x coordinate stayed the same. The y changed. The y just became a negative. We'll talk about how to write the rule. C is at negative 2, negative 2. Okay, D prime, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4, negative 2. All right, we are trying to determine, to write the rule, what happened from the original pre-image here to the image. So negative 3 to negative 3, negative 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 2, negative 4, negative 4. X did not change. Now, 4, negative 4, negative 2, negative 2, negative. The y changes. It changes the sign, so you put negative y. The rule for a reflection across the x-axis is x comma y maps to x comma negative y. Okay. Now, for the rest of these, we're going to be going from this pre-image to each of these. We're not going from here to here and then here to there. That's not what we're doing. We will cover this up and talk about what happens between the x, y, the pre-image, and the y-axis. Okay, so we're going to take an orange highlighter for the y-axis. And for the y-axis rule, then we're going to highlight the y-axis in orange. I want you to go ahead, pause the video, and reflect this across the y-axis. Reflect across the y-axis, write the coordinate points, see if you can create the rule. I'm telling you to pause it, but I'm going to keep going. Okay. The prime, in case you were confused about how I flip, remember I'm counting to the line I'm reflecting across. Okay, now we're going to write them down. 3, 4. 1, 4. 2, 2. 4, 2. Okay, now, like I said, we're going to cover this up. We want to see what happened between x, y to the y-axis. We don't care about the x-axis right now. So the x value went from a negative to a positive. Negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. What that means is, to get from a negative to get to a positive, you're probably going to multiply by a negative. So negative x, that means it switched the sign on the x value. All right, what happened to the y's? They stayed the same. So there's my rule. X comma y maps to negative x comma y. Just as a hint, you either have to be able to actually reflect or memorize the rules. You have to be able to do one or the other. Okay, let's talk about y equals x. That is a straight line, and I will graph where it is. We're going to highlight that in pink. Y equals X is in case you've forgotten how to graph lines, you have y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept. There's nothing here, so it's plus 0. So it starts at 0, 0. Then the slope, since there is no number in front of x, there's an understood 1. So the slope is 1, run 1. You only have to have 2 points to graph a line. There's the line, y equals x. We are going to rotate across it. Rotating across a line, y equals x, is more difficult than reflecting, sorry. Reflecting across a line, y equals x, is more difficult than reflecting across an axis, because you're not just going straight across now. We're going to have to count. All right, in order to reflect across the line, y equals x, what we are going to need to do is count to the line y equals x, like we did with the x and y axis, but it is more difficult. We're actually going to start with C, because going through this picture is hard, and once we get C placed, we actually are going to be able, since we know it's a rigid motion, the shape doesn't change. Once we reflect C, we're going to be able to place B and D, okay? So let's look. From C to this line, I have to go diagonally. Since this is going up 1 over 1, to get to this line, I have to do the opposite of that. I have to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So C prime will be right here. Okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and move D just to save our lives, and then we will place B and A. Down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. D prime. And I can do that for every single point. I'm not going to. Here's why. I don't have to, simply because C to B, B should be over here somewhere. From C to B, I'm going to have up to over 1. So I'm going to have very similar up to over 1 to get B. Reflecting across the y-axis is a lot easier with the rule, and you're going to see what I mean by that in a minute. All right, and then the A is 2 away from B. Okay. Connect, and then we're going to fill it in, and we're going to get the rule. We're going to talk more about how to actually reflect across lines like that tomorrow. This one we're just doing so that we can develop the rule. Okay, so we're going to read what's going on here. So I have A is at 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 3. B, 4, negative 1. C, 2, negative 2. D, 2, negative 4. Okay, now let's look. We don't care about these two rows right now. We just care about the xy to y equals x. 3, negative 4 goes to 4, negative 3. It looks like the x and y swapped. That happened here? Yes. Here? Yes. And here? Yes. So that means our rule for y equals x is x and y are going to swap, so we're going to write y, comma, x. Like I said, it is easier to use the rule. Here's why it's easier to use the rule and to remember the rule. Do you see this rule? Y equals x is y x. I find a lot easier to remember yx is y equals x. Okay, that is the rule for y equals x. And we're going to talk about using that rule in the next examples below. All right, let's get the last one here. Y equals negative x. It's going to be the same process, but it's going to look even different. So we're going to graph y equals negative x. Just like y equals x, the intercept is 0, but this time it goes down 1, right 1. So our line will actually go through our original. Okay, so just like we did a second ago where we counted the opposite slope to reflect, we went down 1 over 1, we're going to do the opposite. The opposite of down 1 over 1 is up 1 over 1. First of all, though, you need to know C stays the same. If it is on the line of reflection, it stays the same. Let's see if that helps us. Okay, now let's do D. To get to the line, we are doing the opposite, up 1 over 1, so that's 1, 2. We're going to do the same thing, up 1 over 1. Here's where D prime should be. Okay, A prime, we just got a little half here, so we're going to go over a little half there. Okay, and then B. We're going to count where it should be from A. It should be in a straight line from A, should be 2 away from A, so B prime. Okay, we're going to draw it. And we're going to color it in. This picture gets really messy, and I know it does every year. All right, now let's write down where our new points are. Okay, we already got C. A prime is at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Negative 4, 3. B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Negative 4, 1. C, we've already got it, stayed in the same place because it was on the line of reflection. And D prime. Negative 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 2, 4. We are comparing, remember, from the beginning to here. It looks like they swapped X and Y, but now they're negatives. They changed the signs. You see how these are very similar, except the signs are opposite? That means that X and Y did swap, but the signs in front changed, so it's negative Y, comma negative X is the rule. Okay? You are either going to need to be able to actually physically reflect with the description or memorize the rules. They will not be given to you. That will probably be some test questions for a little while. What is the rule? All right, let's work on these. This example that's kind of hard to see says reflect EFG over the x-axis. That means you're either using the rule or you're just reflecting. Reflecting over the x-axis is not one that's hard to do so that you would need the rule. Because remember, here's the x-axis, and I'm just going to count. So E to the x-axis is 1 unit. So I'm going to go up 1 unit in the same direction, E prime. G is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. F, 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. So 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. I personally like reflecting over the X and the Y axis just by physically doing it instead of writing down the rule. But the rest of them, I like to memorize the rule because I don't do the best at reflecting because I end up making simple mistakes, and you might too. So let's talk about how to do something with the rule. Now, This rule says x comma y maps to y comma x. Just so you know, we've already written that one down. That means it's going to reflect over y equals x. So you can either reflect it across or use the rule. I'm going to use the rule. I find it to be a lot simpler. Here is how I use the rule. I write down H, I think that's I, and K. It might be J, I don't know. H, I, K. I'm going to write down their points. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So H prime is 4, negative 2. That's how I like to do it. I find that I don't have to worry about making mistakes that way. I, or maybe J, is at negative 1. No, it's not. It's at 0, 1. I was looking at going this way at the point. 0, 1. So I prime, or J prime, depending on what that says, is at 1, 0. Okay. K is at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Negative 4, 1. So K prime is at 1, negative 4. And then we're just going to graph them. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 2, H prime. I prime, or J prime, is at 1, 0. I prime. See, that makes sense if you flip right here, but I like to write it down. You get to choose. 1, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. K prime. Okay. And there we go. I have reflected across the y-axis. Y equals x. I have used the rule because I find using the rule to be simpler so that I don't make simple mistakes. Reflecting over axes, such as the x and y, are a lot easier to do by just doing that, but if you want to use the rule, go for it. We're going to describe a reflection in the next one. Okay, there are a couple of ways to think about reflecting something. You could take and start taking your lines and saying, okay, here's the x-axis. Did this flip over here? No. Okay, y-axis. Did it flip over here? It looks like it did. So that's how I could say, oh, okay, I'm pretty sure this is a reflection across the y-axis. You could also write down the points for L, for M, for N. Write down the points for L prime, M prime, N prime, and see what happened. Those two ways are how you are going to determine what happened. Now, we're pretty sure it's a reflection across the y-axis. We can write the points down to check. We don't have to, but I'm going to just to show you that if you ever need to check, you have that option. So L is at negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. 1, 2, 3. M, negative 2, 4. N, negative 3, 1. Now, I said we're pretty sure it's a reflection across the y-axis, which means the only thing that should change is the x should be negative based on our rule up here. So let's just see. L is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3. Oh, look, that seemed to have worked. 5, 3. The x is now positive. M, 2, 4. It worked for that point as well. 3, 1. It worked there too. So therefore, it definitely is a reflection across the y-axis. You did not have to write the points I want you to for notes. But in future, you don't have to, because you should be able to identify them. If you can't, write the points down and see what happened, okay? We're going to do some more of this tomorrow. This is kind of just the basic touching base of, you got 3 rules, not 3, 4 rules. You need to be memorizing them, okay? Go do the parts of the homework that it says to do, and I don't think you have to finish it today, but do as much as you can, and I'll see you tomorrow.